Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I wanted to share with you guys the different books that I read in the months of February and March, which are actually 13 in total. So I'm super excited to share with you the ratings and the different thoughts I had around those. Also, I wanted to share with you guys the books that I plan to read for the month of April, which, kind of to give you a heads up, I do plan to read 10 different books, some of which is the start of a series, some which are standalone. So yeah, that's what this video is going to be about today. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Alrighty, so now that we have our tea, I am ready to dive into the books that I ended up reading in the months of February and March. Both of these months look very different when it comes to how much reading I got done. And I think it had a little to do with the weather, specifically in February. It was just a little down in energy. I don't know how else to explain it, but it did definitely put me into a reading slump, and I didn't get to start anything until the end of the month. And thankfully I ended up picking up one of the best books I've read in a long time, and they're actually a series, and that is the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. So I ended up reading the first two books of this series, and that is Mistborn and The Well of Ascension in the months of February, and then in the month of March I ended up reading the last book of this series, which is The Hero of Ages. Now I did do a reading vlog, or a couple of reading vlogs, on this particular series and kind of how I felt overall, and I did end up giving all three of these books a 5. They were amazing. These books had everything that I love in a fantasy. It had hints of romance. It had great world building. It had great character development. And it wasn't just one or two characters that we saw so much growth with. We had a range of characters in this series that you care so deeply about throughout the world building that I really grew attached to just about every single one of the characters in this series. And I highly recommend it to anyone who wants to kind of jump into the Brandon Sanderson Cosmere world, because it by far has been one of the best series that I've read in a long time. After reading Mistborn, I really needed to kind of break away from all the emotions that I was feeling in regards to that. So I decided to pick up The Inmate by Frida McFadden. And I also did a reading vlog with this one, and I really did enjoy this book. It had a lot of great twists and turns, and I definitely did not see the ending coming when it came to this book. The characters themselves, for the most part, were likable as well. And yeah, this was my first Frida McFadden book, and it definitely won't be my last. And I did rate this a 4. So that was pretty good considering it was my first thriller. The next book I picked up in March was Sunrise on the Reaping. So this is part of the Hunger Games series written by Suzanne Collins. And this book turned out to be a 5-star read for me. I went through so many different emotions reading this book, but the biggest thing is that I definitely cried and was heartbroken for a large part of this book. I feel like it was great to finally get Hamich's story, and I feel like also something that Suzanne did was really give us not only a better understanding on how the Hunger Games made it as long as it did, but also all the work that went behind ensuring that there were still supporters of the Hunger Games. And I love Haymitch so much. I'm so happy that in the end he did find Katniss and Peeta, because his story is truly devastating. After Haymitch's story, I needed something a little bit more lighthearted, something to lift my spirits, if you will. And I decided to pick up a duology. And this is The Letters of Enchantment. And the first book is Divine Rivals, and the second book is Ruthless Vows. Together, I rated this set a 3.75. They had an amazing love story. I felt the main characters are Iris and Kit, and they are two columnists who are competing for one promotion at the newspaper facility that they work at. And I felt like I really enjoyed the banter in this book. Kit and Iris going back and forth, and then them going from enemies to really learning one another and then finding love was really, really nice to follow. The world building wasn't as strong, I will say that. We get to see a little bit of where the magic happens, if you will, but you don't really get to fully grasp like how they made that work. And also the gods in this story, I found them to be a little complex for me, because I felt like one was having a war with the other, but the other one was not participating. And then we finally get to see the other god, but I was just a little unsatisfied on her input into the war, if I'm being completely honest. One thing that did take me by surprise as well is how Iris becomes one of the biggest reasons why the war is won. And I won't go into too much detail on that, how that happens, but I did find that to be one of the most surprising parts of this set. But overall, I did enjoy it. I still rated it a 3.75, and I do recommend it for anybody who does enjoy reading young adult. Alrighty, so the next book I picked up in March was The 13th Child. And this book specifically, I did do a reading vlog, so I won't get too deep into it. I do recommend that you go check that out. But I did really enjoy this one. I believe I rated it a 4. And one of the biggest reasons why I rated this a 4 was because it felt like a really, really good bedtime story. A long one at that, but a really good bedtime story all the same. One of the reasons why I say that is because the way that the story begins is kind of being told to the main character, which is Hazel. And it's pretty much the story of how she is promised to her godfather, the god of death, Merrick. And after that, you begin to see her story unfold and kind of how her childhood was one that was not very pleasant, and then her finally reuniting with her godfather, and then her becoming this very competent healer, and where that takes her. And also it does have some romance elements to it. So I really enjoyed this story because I felt like it gave me a little bit of everything. Yeah, it was just an overall really good story. So I highly recommend this to anybody who wants to check out a good young adult fantasy. So the next book I picked up is a nonfiction book, and I really, really enjoyed this one. It's Bad Blood, Secrets and Lies in a Silicon Valley Startup. And this follows the story of Elizabeth Holmes and her company, Theranos. And in this company, the goal was to create a medical device that with a few drops of blood, it could run a slew of blood panels. Now, it obviously does not end well because they do commit corporate fraud in the story. But overall, I feel like it did a really good job illustrating how the mission of a company can start out really great. However, sometimes due to the wrong types of leaders, it could really end up in a very dark place because one, you can lose all integrity. Also, you can make a horrible impact on patients and their lives, as well as showing how not everything that's out there is truly what it seems. But overall, it was a really great read. I did end up rating this a 5. Alrighty, so those were the physical books that I read in March. And now I wanted to talk about the books that I read on my Kindle with my Kindle Unlimited subscription. So I did read 3 books on my Kindle, and all 3 of these do fall under the MC romance genre. And I did enjoy all 3 of them. They were quite nice. I think these are pretty new writers within the Kindle Unlimited subscription world. So I'll start off with Charlotte McGinney, the Huntsman's MC romance series that she has. I read Piston, and then I read Steel. So I did skip book 2 in this series, but overall I did enjoy both of these books. I did rate both of these books a 3, and one of the reasons why it wasn't a little bit higher was just because I did feel like at times both of these stories felt a little bit rocky in regards to the plot. But overall, they were not bad at all. I really did find myself giggling at certain moments, then finding myself a little frustrated at others. But overall, they were really enjoyable. And I do plan to go back to the second book. And then the third book that I read from my Kindle subscription was Asher. And this is by Tiffany Casper. I didn't enjoy this one that much, if I'm being honest. I just felt like the characters themselves were nice, but I did feel like the story was a bit simple, and the MC development or like the backstory to them wasn't as strong. And I kind of like to have a little bit more background when it comes to the MC in order for me to kind of really be part of their world and as I follow the couples along. But overall, I did rate this a 2.75. If it would have just had a little bit more character development as well, I would have ended up rating it a 3. But it is my first book by Tiffany Casper, and I will probably still check out other parts of her work. But for this one, it just wasn't a really good one for me. So those were all the books that I read in the months of February and March. As you can see, it was a wide range of different types of genres, but they were all enjoyable in their own ways. And now I wanted to show you the books that I will be reading in the month of April. Same thing, a wide range, but I definitely am in a romance mood. So you're gonna see a lot more romance in this set of books that I do plan to read. Now, there are 10 books here, so a bit of a challenge for myself, but I think I can do it. And I'll start off with the first book. And what I think I will do with the books that I'm going to go through is just kind of go through all of them and mention the genre and kind of why I decided to pick it up. But I won't read too much about the back because I do want to go into all of these blindly, if I'm being honest, just because that's most of the time how I prefer to read most of my books. So I'll start with the first one, which is Love and Gelato. And the reason why I picked this one up was because, one, it has ice cream on the front. It seems like it's going to be a romance book. And I don't know, that's kind of what I'm in the mood for. So this is going to be my first read. The next one is Fly With Me. It seemed, again, like a romance book, but I feel like it's giving rom-com. I don't know. Is anybody else feeling this by just the cover alone? So I'm excited for that one as well. The next book is Icebreaker. This one I've seen before, and I do know it's a sports romance, but this is the first time I'm in the mood for a romance book. So this is another reason why I decided to pick this one up. I already started my Frida McFadden journey, and I really enjoyed the first book, which was The Inmate, and now I decided I'm going to pick up the next book by her, which is The Housemaid is Watching. The cover was giving a little bit of creepy, and it says, she lives next door, she knows your secrets. I'm excited to check it out. I'm excited to see what plot twist this has, and hopefully it's just as good as The Inmate. The next book I picked up because I do have the intention of finally starting the Handmaid series, but I never watch a series or a movie that is based off a book without reading the book first. So I will be reading The Handmaid's Tale, and this is by Margaret Atwood. I'm super excited about it because I have heard great things about this, and hopefully I do enjoy it. The next one is The Poppy War, and this is by R.F. Kuang. This is going to be my first book by this writer, so I'm super excited because it does fall into the fantasy genre. The next one is Dune. This one is by Frank Herbert, and it does fall under sci-fi. And one thing I did kind of set as a goal for myself in this new year is to read more sci-fi. It seems like there's so much good sci-fi out there that I've never read before, and this is going to be the start of that journey. The next one is The Arithmetist, and this is by Brandon Sanderson. I just want to get back into the Brandon Sanderson world, and I figured what better way to do it than to read a light-hearted young adult book, which is, you know, just a standalone. So I'm excited to check it out. And this one's been on my bookshelf for a while. I did buy it during Black Friday, if I'm being honest, and this is A Study in Drowning. And one of the reasons why I wanted to read this was because the little blurb in the back, which says, "But if fairies and monsters were real, so were the women who defeated them." So I'm super excited to check this one out as well. It does fall under the fantasy genre. And then finally, I do plan to read A Tempest of Tea. And this one I did pick up during my latest book haul. It sounded super interesting because it does fall under the fantasy realm, and it also gives us vampires, which I do enjoy a good vampire story. So hopefully this is equally as enjoyable. And that's it for my February and March reading wrap up and all the books that I intend to read in the month of April. If you like this video, I invite you to hit that like button. It does really help my channel, as well as hit that subscribe button for more bookish content. And thank you so much for your support. It really does mean the world to me, and I hope to catch you on the next one.